I thought the first PMQs back from Easter recess was going to be another slow afternoon in the Commons. It wasn't. What I'm about to walk you through is the moment a sitting Prime Minister was told on the floor of his own chamber that his time in number 10 is essentially up. He could only stutter something so weak the chamber barely reacted, before pivoting to attack the very party that just exposed him. Stephen Flynn, the SNP's Westminster leader, had the entire Easter recess to sharpen his question. Sir Keir Starmer had the same fortnight to think of a real answer. He hadn't. The clip you're about to see is what happened when these two facts collided in front of every cabinet minister in the room. This affects your bills, it affects your fuel pump, it affects your mortgage. The House of Commons Library has petrol up 14 pence a litre and diesel up 29 in less than 4 weeks. I'm going to walk you through how the Prime Minister ended up with no answer to any of that, what was actually at stake in the exchange, and why the line Flynn delivered should have ended a political career on the spot. It didn't. It exposed one instead. Here's how we got here. The Easter recess in Westminster ran from the 1st of April, 2 days before MPs went home. The Strait of Hormuz was already shut. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had been mining shipping lanes since the end of February. 20% of the world's seaborne oil and roughly the same share of liquefied natural gas passed through that strip of water. Brent crude went from around $70 before the war to over $100 by the 8th of March, peaking at 126. UK wholesale gas was up roughly 75% between late February and the 23rd of March. On the House of Commons Library's own figures, this is what's happening to the world's energy supply, while Parliament was on holiday. Now look what Britain put on the table for households. Energy bills, they did fall by an average of £117 from the 1st of April. The cut was already announced in the autumn budget. It was already locked in before the war had begun. The Prime Minister has spent every press conference since claiming credit for it. The Crisis and Resilience Fund, run through English councils, started running on the same day with £1 billion of funding. That too was pre-announced. There is £53 million for households exposed to heating oil. That's the sum total always on the table. Compare that to Ireland. The Taoiseach's office confirmed a €505 million support package, on top of an earlier €250 million tax break. That's roughly €755 million from a country of just over 5 million people. Per head, the Irish are providing many times the new support per person that British households are getting. The Irish Times fact-checked the comparison directly. Their verdict was straightforward. Martin is absolutely correct, and that the British government has introduced no new measures in response to the current crisis. None. Cornwall Insight forecast the July energy price cap could rise by another £160 compared to April. But that's just what the public was told before recess. What followed in the chamber is what is actually on tape. We'll come back to the Prime Minister's answer, and trust me, the line that landed before it is significantly worse than the silence around it. And that is exactly why the room Starmer walked into on the 22nd of April was a problem he could not talk his way out of, because the cost of living wasn't the only thing waiting for him. Weeks earlier, the man Sir Keir Starmer had personally appointed as ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, had been sacked over revelations about security vetting and his documented relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The civil servant who used to head the Foreign Office, Sir Ollie Robbins, had given evidence to the Foreign Affairs Committee about how that appointment was forced through. Starmer's own former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, had resigned in February, taking responsibility for the call. The first PMQs back from recess was the first time the Prime Minister had to face the chamber, after all of that broke into open daylight. And the polling is where the institutional rot becomes legible. YouGov in January put Starmer's net favourability at -57. That is the joint lowest figure YouGov has ever recorded for a sitting Prime Minister. The only person tied with him is Liz Truss. 3/4 of British voters see him unfavourably. Reform UK is on 27 to 28%. Labour is on 18. The first MRP of the year, by More in Common, projected Reform on 381 seats, and Labour 85. The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, tried to enter the Commons through the Gorton and Denton by-election, so he could then mount a leadership challenge. On the 25th of January, Labour's National Executive Committee blocked him from standing. So the question Stephen Flynn stood up to ask was not just about petrol, it was about whether a Prime Minister, whose own party will not let him be challenged, still has the political authority to deliver anything at all. The four-word phrase Starmer repeated twice in a single answer told the chamber he had nothing. And if you think the silence after he sat down was the worst of it, you're not even close. I told you we would get to it, but we're not there yet. Wait till you hear the line that came in Flynn's question, the one that landed before Starmer had even finished standing up. That brings us finally to the clip itself. And that is exactly the trap Starmer walked into on the afternoon of the 22nd of April. Here it is, the exchange, the moment, the line that, frankly, should have ended the career of a sitting Prime Minister on the spot. The speaker, called Stephen Flynn, opened on the IRGC, on the missile strikes, on the line that, despite the entire Easter break to think about, the Prime Minister had brought to the chamber a statement with, and I'm quoting the exact phrase Flynn used, explicitly no financial support for the households on the Isles whatsoever. He pointed at Ireland. He pointed at the support the Irish government had put on the table for motorists and farmers in the same crisis Britain was supposedly grappling with. And there, in front of every cabinet minister sitting on the front bench, in front of his own backbenchers who already think he's finished, in front of Kemi Badenoch on the opposition benches who already knows she's leading in the polls against him, Flynn delivered the line. It is a single, courteous, devastating sentence. Hansard recorded it. The cameras caught it. It is the line that the Telegraph led with that afternoon, that the Guardian led with, that Sky News looped for 48 hours straight. You're about to hear it firsthand. What was at stake in those 4 seconds is not the Prime Minister. It is whether a parliamentary system can handle a major external shock. When its government is already being consumed by an internal scandal, it cannot escape. 20,000 mariners are stranded in the Persian Gulf. 2,000 ships are anchored outside the Strait. Brent is over $100 a barrel. The energy cap is forecast to rise by another £160 in July. And the answer Starmer gave to the question of what Britain was doing to protect its own people was 4 words long, repeated twice. Those 4 words is why we're here. There is no point in me describing it any further. I've told you what led here. I've told you what was at stake. I've told you what the documented record shows. Everything I've just walked you through was the warm-up. The line is short, the chamber went quiet, the Prime Minister stood up and gave the answer of a man who knows he has nothing left to offer. Watch what happens.
Stephen Flynn.
The Prime Minister is absolutely right to condemn the abhorrent response of the terrorists in the IRGC, but I noticed from his statement that despite having the entire Easter break to think about it, there is explicitly no new financial support for households on these isles whatsoever, despite the fact that in Ireland, they've put down €750 billion worth of support for motorists and farmers. The best he can muster is to continue to monitor the effects. Now, I appreciate that he might not be in office for very much longer, but whilst he is, the public expect him to provide support. Why isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll remind him that we put in support and protection for our citizens in the region by taking defensive action. He opposed that. Protection for Scottish citizens in the Gulf, and they opposed taking any action whatsoever. It is only because we've stabilised the economy we're able to reduce energy bills. What did they do? They voted against the budget in which we put forward the money for this. So we will carefully do the work that we need to do, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is the single most effective thing we can do in relation to household costs, and to work for de-escalation. I would have thought that he would have supported that, but unfortunately, again, he's on the opportunistic road rather than up the road to support what we really need to do.
Debbie Abrahams.